Sarah, Mr. Miller, and welcome once again to this beautiful study circle on the message of Jesus and Bhagwan's insights on the life and the teachings of Jesus Christ. One of the things that very common in every Christmas discourse, of course, it ends with love. Perhaps you'll never find any Christmas message where Swami has not spoken about love. Ultimately, it will end with love, and he will say that live in God, God is love. But one way, Swami said, you can practice love is practicing three principles. One is you should forget all the harm that is done to you, which basically means you should love your enemies.
Right.
The second thing is that you should forget all the good that you have done to others. And the third is to see God in everyone, to see love in everyone. Can you dwell on what is your perspective on love your enemies? How easy is it in the business world? Can we really do it?
You know, I've always felt that when Jesus said, love your enemies, it was the most radical thing he ever asked us to do. You know, the most difficult, the most provocative, the most, I don't know, just something you want to even just, I can't do it. You know, I don't know what that means. So I'd like to read a few words of what he actually said and talk about it in light of what Swami also says about what does he mean by love.
Okay.
What is divine love? He says divine love, first of all, has three qualities. It is changeless, means it's unconditional. It doesn't turn on and off like a faucet. It is selfless, it doesn't ask for something back. And it's fearless. It's strong, it's always radiating.
Wow.
Now, Jesus said at one point, he says, I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Now, by the way, who's the enemy? It's not just someone from another country. It can be the person who just shoved you sitting down in the mandir. You know, in that moment, you think that this is an enemy. You know, or it could be the person in your family that has a very different opinion about something, and you are battling with them like they're an enemy. So enemies can be at all sorts of levels of consciousness. But he says, and so love your enemies, to pray for those who persecute you, to show that you are the children of your Father who is in heaven, to show you that you know that you have the same DNA as God and everyone else shares that divinity. For he makes the sun rise on the wicked and the good, God does, and makes the rain fall upon the upright and the wrongdoers alike, which is what Jesus is saying, is that God's love is changeless and unconditional.
To love like the sun loves everyone.
Yes.
But can we really do it?
Yes. Well, you know, one of the first things I just want to say is the English language makes it difficult in one way. Because the English language has subject, verb, object. I love my wife. So it's as if I'm loving my wife because of some quality of my wife. Okay? I'm loving because of some quality that's in this object. And yet what God's love is doesn't have an object. God simply is love. And whatever comes in the consciousness of God gets bathed in that love. God's love rains on the just and the unjust. The sun rises on the good and the bad. So God's love doesn't...
You don't love to be loved back.
You don't love to be loved back, and you don't love because of the qualities.
Yes. You love
simply
because...
love, not
you
because.
Are loved. There's no because.
There's no because,
Yes.
you know. And so this is what Jesus was teaching, and this is how, you know, he said, the other thing that Jesus said, he says, you know, treat well those who detest you, pursue you with hatred, be merciful, sympathetic, tender, responsive, and compassionate, even as your Father is all of these. So he was really exhorting, like, this was our calling. This is our vocation, if you will. Now, how did Jesus actually embody that? What gives him the right to say that? You know?
Yes.
We can look at the end of his life,
Yes.
you know, as in the body before he rose, and see that how, okay, changeless, okay, when he's up on the cross, what does he say? God, forgive them, for they know not what they do. That forgiveness was an automatic expression of his love. That whether that we're praising him or harming him, he could love.
Yes.
Selfless. when he was in the night before his death, he was in the Garden of Olives, they said. And he was so distressed about what was about to happen, he was even sweating blood. But he eventually said, Father, I don't want to do this, but it's not my will that counts. It's your will. Let it be selfless. Let me not do it because I have an ego desire. I don't want to face the pain. Let me be surrendered. Let me be selfless here. This was another act of love on his part. And the fearless, the fact that he was even willing to die.
Yes.
Because he knew it was coming, and he'd known it for a while. So that was the fearlessness, that he was willing to follow what he needed to do. So that's the prescription. Now, how do we live that? Even in our day-to-day, how do we practice love that is changeless?
Fearless.
And fearless.
Selfless.
And selfless. Perhaps one of those is that, when we're serving others, are we serving them? Do we serve in the kitchen? Do we serve at our customers at work? Do we serve our children because we want something back? Or do we do it simply because that's an expression of love? We can monitor ourselves and see how well we're growing. If someone then doesn't like what we've done for them and we get angry, oh, okay, then we had a string attached to that. That was not selfless love. So we can watch ourselves. And we can also, by the way, not have the expectation of ourselves that we'll always be perfect. We can love ourselves even with our faults. If we're changeless, can I, it's like this, I love little puppy dogs. I see a little small puppy dog and I go, I melt, I have this expression of love coming from my heart. Now, can I hold that and then turn it over here to a situation that I don't normally like? Can I hold the same heart opening and see what happens there? Where this becomes very important in my marriage. My wife and I decided before we were married that when we are in a conflict, okay, and we might at some level think we're enemies, okay, we realize there is no wisdom because when we're in conflict, the mind and wisdom has shut down. The heart has closed. And the heart is the seat of the Buddhi.
Yes.
So we said, if we're in conflict, it is okay for us to say, time out. Let's put this on the altar. Let's put it at God's feet. Let's wait until we are in a place of open-heartedness where we actually have some wisdom. Then we'll renew the conversation and we'll see what to do. Because why struggle to come up with a solution when there's no wisdom? It's going to be an unwise solution.
Yes.
It'll simply be something that stops the conflict, but won't really be a solution. So let's just pause a day, a week, an hour, until we're both ready to come back with an open heart. We can hold hands, look each other in the eye, and say, now let's continue the conversation. What shall we do here? So that's the way that we have moved back into the sense of let's be in a loving place where it's unconditional, and then look at our differences.
And it works wonderfully in organizations also, isn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. It's part of, for example, at Hewlett-Packard one time, they did a piece of research at Hewlett-Packard Labs. The head at that time was a man named Frank Karuba. And he wanted to study what was the difference between project teams that were not successful, project teams that were successful. This is, worldwide product development for Hewlett-Packard. And then teams that were extraordinarily successful, even beyond their own imagination. Mm-hmm. Well, the difference between unsuccessful and successful teams, as you might imagine, was differences of talent, creativity, motivation, vision, things like this. But there was no difference on any of those qualities between the successful teams and the extraordinary teams. None of the things about talent or creativity or motivation or vision explained the difference. But there was, he said, two qualities that stood out in the extraordinary teams. The first was that those people truly, deeply cared about the people they would be serving.
Wow.
And he said, now, this is extraordinary. These are geeks who actually understood they had customers, They weren't just technical, technocrats. They actually felt they wanted to put themselves in their other people's shoes with empathy and really create for them something that was good. He said, but the second quality was a quality of truth. He said they found in themselves a spirit of truth in which no one had to pretend to be something that they weren't. That they could be authentic. They could say, I don't know, if they didn't know. There was no politics going on that way. He said, so really, it was the qualities of love and caring and truth and authenticity. Those two qualities brought the synergy of good, talented, motivated people, let's say from 70% to 95%. And that's where the extraordinary results came from.
Wow.
So the caring, that sense of love and reaching out, not being self-interested,
Fantastic.
really has a powerful, powerful impact in the business world.
In fact, I remember when Bhagwan was speaking to all the management students, he would give the definition of manager and say M stands for mind of man and A stands for awareness of the Atma. So what it means is the mind of man should always be aware of the Atma, of the same Atma which is there in everyone.
Yes.
And that is when you can truly be a manager. And Bhagwan used to say that, management is all about man management. It's all about how you can, your mind can feel the Atma, which is there in the other person.
When you're talking about the Atma there, it takes me to the value of truth, as I was also just talking about.
Yes.
Because
that is the truth.
yes, and Jesus said, if you follow my teachings, you'll come to know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yeah.
Now, what truth is he talking about? Is he talking about the truth where you don't tell a lie? Well, his life was bigger than that. Was it the truth like these are the facts? Somewhat, that you're living the truth. But ultimately, truth means that which never changes.
Yes.
And so what he was really coming to say is that you will know the true being of God. That is truth. That is Sathya.
Yes.
He says, and it's that true being of God, and you're knowing the true being of God, that will set you free.
Yes.
And that is really the sense of how we then begin to see all as divine, like you were just talking about, and how we begin to treat each other with the knowledge that, we all share the divine principle. We're all sons and daughters of God. We're all in the DNA together. That's really what comes alive.
On one Christmas discourse, Bhagwan very beautifully said, the cosmos is controlled by the divine.
Yes.
But the divine is governed by truth. And Swami said the truth is governed by noble people.
Yes.
And that is the reason why noble people are divine. So when you start practicing these principles, you actually become noble. And in fact, Swami says, it is these people who govern truth.
Yes.
Truth.
And this is where the whole movement towards transparency in government, transparency in business, transparency in our relationships, that is an expression of this truth.
Yes.
I know that in India, one of the revolutions that's happening is that as the bureaucracies are converted into sophisticated IT systems that can track things, the possibility of corruption goes down exponentially because there's transparency into how things are being handled, where they're getting stalled or not stalled, what is the flow through, what is the customer service, And so this is where there is a movement of bringing more truth alive in the actual physical world. This is not just a spiritual dimension, this is a physical earth dimension.
But technology can only aid. Technology only can do so much.
Right.
Ultimately, as Bhagwan says, the transformation should happen.
Yes, absolutely. There's another expression similar to truth, and that is righteousness. As you were saying, truth and righteousness go together like left foot and right foot.
Yes, yes.
And that dharma, that righteousness, in one way gets captured by the expression found in all religions, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The golden rule. It is found in every single religious text just about that I've ever researched together. And one example of how that actually is a practical thing in our life as well. There's a man named Dr. Chattopadhyay. He was the head of our refractories for one of the companies here, ACC Cement, I think at the time. And he had a situation where an employee had left, had been dismissed from the company. That employee went out on his own and started selling a a type of product that was the same as what ACC was making. But it was not a good product. But he represented it as if it was ACC. And so a customer came to ACC and says, your product has failed. And they said, what product? We've never sold to you. Yes, you did, through this man. He says, that man doesn't work for us. Well, he sold me saying, so all of a sudden, Dr. Chattopadhyay was faced with, here was a customer who had bought, thinking he was buying from his company, but he was buying bogus from somebody else. So what do? He had no responsibility to that customer. He had never sold anything to them. But he said, sir, I will make it right for you. You bought it based on thinking you were buying from us. We have a reputation with you. We will uphold that reputation.
Oh.
Okay? So he did what he felt was dharmic, what was righteous. What he also did from that is he created a trust in his company. That this company stands by its reputation, and its reputation is based on trust. And that was great business. So this is where, treating other people as you would have them treat you.
Yes.
This is where that becomes extremely good business principle. Extremely good.
Amazing. In fact, I remember how on one occasion when Bhagwan was very tired, and the people who were serving Swami, they said, Swami, you should not go for darshan this evening because you are already so tired. Please do not go out for darshan. And there Swami says, do you think I go out to give darshan? I go out to actually have darshan. I go out to see them.
Yes.
Because they have come from so long, and they have come because I have called them.
Yes.
They have come at my will. And I am going there so that I can share love, so that I can see myself.
Yes. That's wonderful, wonderful. Jesus said something else that comes from this way of being. He talked to his disciples and he said, do not be agitated. My peace I give to you. The peace I know from my relationship with the Father, I give to you. And it's not the peace of this world. It's the peace from your spiritual knowledge.
Wow.
And that sense of peace that comes from following the sense of love. It's when we have that sense of unconditional love, and we're fearless naturally.
Yes.
Because when it's unconditional love, there is no other in a
Yes.
sense.
True.
And there's a sense of peace there. And that is where I want to come back to this theme of trust. There's a man named N.S. Raghavan. He was one of the founders of Infosys many, many decades ago, actually. And over time, he became the head of human resources. And he said one of the core values of Infosys was that of internal trust, that we trusted each other. And that has since been found, by the way, from research as being the most fundamental quality of great places to work. When they do studies of where the employees say this is a great place to come to work, trust is the fundamental foundation. But he said, how do you build trust? Do you look at your employees and say, you have to earn my trust? He says, that's backwards. He says, you start with trusting employees.
Yes.
You start from the basis of I trust you. I have no basis not to trust you.
Yes.
Okay. Now, if you give me a basis not to trust you, okay. But I'm going to start from the sense of I trust. What happens when you do that is that the employees often rise to the occasion. It's the first time they've been trusted.
Yes. They rise to the occasion.
They rise to the occasion. There was one story I heard recently where, this was in Malaysia or Indonesia. And in that environment, there was a lot of mistrust. And this man started a company. Part of the mistrust would be employees typically in that culture might steal a lot of things from the company, small things. So this man started a food company and says, I'm going to do that differently. I'm going to pay them well so that they don't feel a scarcity. I'm going to treat them well, and I'm going to say, I trust you implicitly. Now, he also put in good metrics, good measures, but he found that the level of stealing became non-existent almost.
Oh, wow.
Now, if someone did steal something, they were immediately let go. There was no tolerance. And yet, there was so little of it, not because of the fear of that, but because people had already risen to we like this, and this is the peaceful environment we want to work in.
Because intrinsically everyone is good.
Yes, that's the truth.
That's the truth.
You know, that is what something that in the 1950s, McGregor and others who are the business writers talked about, that people are good. And again, Hewlett-Packard founded on a principle that people are good. They simply want to do a good job if you give them the right environment. You know, now we have to be wise about that, but we have to start from the belief that we are all having those values in us. We all have that aspiration in us to be able to express who we really are. We may have lost the trust that that's possible. We may become discouraged in life. We may have drawn a conclusion that it's not possible in life. But that's the healing. That's the healing that Jesus actually came to help do. And that's why he does come to say, love your enemies, as hard as that may seem. All the rest may be easy. You know. And it comes to one other principle, and that is nonviolence. You know, there is so much violence in the world, and yet there's also so much energy for nonviolence. You know,
absolutely.
And that, you know, you look at whether it's Martin Luther King or Gandhi or people like that, and you know, those are the kind of kingpins, we might say, the people who've done that. But there's a man named Ashok Mehta. He used to work as the head of human resources at Times of India. He tells a beautiful story where when he first started to work there, there was this rivalry between the administration and the journalists. You know, they didn't talk to each other well. There was kind of a enmity, you know, not a violence per se, but certainly a real discord between them. And he was part of the administration. But what he did, he says, he went to the floor where the journalists were, and he set up his office there.
Oh.
And they said, what are you doing here? You don't belong here. You're the bad guys. You know, go. He says, there's no bad guys here. You know, you're not bad guys. They're not bad guys. This is where I'd like my office. I'm sorry, sir. You know, you're not welcome here. And he says, tell you what, give me 10 days. Let me be here for 10 days. If at the end of 10 days you don't want me here, I will go. But try me for 10 days. And his notion of Advaita, his notion that we are all one here, spread the way he treated them that day, spread the way, of course, he treated his colleagues also. At the end of 10 days, he says, okay, no one's asked me to stay. I think I should go. Oh, no, don't go. Don't go. You know, you're different. And he was able to bring them together in meetings and bridge that difference, bridge that emotional violence, if you call it that, that happens in the workplace. Bridge that mental violence. It doesn't happen necessarily because of anything physical, but you can feel it. You know, and this is how, again, we are called to be love. To be love is expressed as truth or righteousness or peace or nonviolence. And if we carry that unconditional, selfless, fearless sense of love, if we develop that in ourselves, and we can tell, you know, no one has to tell us if we're in that state. We know ourselves if we're being conditional with our love. We know if we're being selfish. We know if we have fear. But if we're determined to keep growing, previously we talked about these stages of growing from a sense of dualism all the way to oneness. As we grow in that, we will actually be able to harness these human values, harness that sense of love, and find that life is so much easier, not harder. You know what I mean?
Life becomes a celebration.
You
celebrate every moment, because in every moment you will see the beautiful, miraculous power of love working.
Exactly. And so I think that's, to me, that's the story of what Jesus is bringing us, is the story of love. His life reflected love, every moment of it. Even when he was in the temple and throwing out the money changers and screaming at people, it reminds me of times when Swami has raised his voice and maybe shouted a bit. He's done that so to me a couple of times. And yet you could feel he was not shouting at me. He was shouting at my bad tendency. But to me, he was nothing but love. You know,
and that is the reason why even when he shouted, you only loved him more because you know that it was only another form of his love.
Exactly. And even Jesus, in those moments that people see him as, criticize, or not criticizing, but, being harsh in his language, you hypocrites, he was talking to his fellow sons and daughters of God
Yes.
and saying, don't be that way. There was one night, not too long before he was crucified, where he was up on the hill overlooking Jerusalem, and he wept. He says, you had this beautiful chance, and you've wasted it. My time has come to the end. You didn't take the opportunity God, our Father, has given you. And he wept. He wasn't angry with those people. He was compassionate to them. The very people who were going to come after him soon.
Yes.
But he wept because they had turned their backs on the opportunity to awaken to their God nature.
Yes.
And that's how we have to remember
Yes.
those moments when we feel closed-hearted and justified in our mind, that we need to take that time because there's no wisdom there.
We are just losing one more opportunity. Every second gives us an opportunity, and we are missing it.
Exactly.
The whole 86 years of Bhagwan was only doing this. It was only giving us these opportunities to unleash this power within ourselves.
And see, the opportunity is not ended.
Not ended.
That's what it is. It continues
Yes,
on.
it continues.
From Jesus' words, it continues from Baba.
Yes.
And as we take this, our time in this body will come to an end.
Yes.
Birth is fatal.
Yes.
And so if we take this opportunity as much as we have this body
Yes.
to imbibe and really live what we've been taught,
Yes.
and that's the ultimate gift that we give back to God.
Absolutely. What God has given us is His gift, but ultimately what we become is our gift
Yes.
to Him, and that is the best Christmas gift that we can give Him, when we become love that He always wanted us to be and that He always is every point in time.
I can't say that any better.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Saram.